Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. We're joined today by David Travis, who's Chief Product and Technology Officer at Red Bee Media, and more importantly, Director at Leyton Orient Football Club. Hi, how you doing?
Very well, thank you. It's good to talk to you, Simon.
Good, thanks for coming on. So you work in I think what's an amazing industry and has kept a lot of people going over the dark times over COVID and lockdown and whatever pending doom's coming. But it must have been a really hectic time for you and really busy with lots of demand from lots of different people to keep the world ticking and news flowing. So what things have you seen in the media in your industry around change or pace of work as a result of COVID?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's been extremely interesting times and every part of our business has had to change. I mean, we have two aspects that we have to consider. We have the day-to-day operations that we do as a business in terms of managing the technical operations for customers like the BBC, ITV, Channel 4. I mean, pretty much most of the major channels in the UK are managed by our business. So we have to provide the continuity of operations while having to protect the best interests of our staff and their safety. And so from a technology perspective, we are considered critical workers. So we're allowed to have people travel into the office. But while we're doing that, and that's not just in the UK, that's in France, that's in the Netherlands, that's in Sweden, it's a big organization. We have people going into the office, so we have to protect their interests. But there are a lot of activities that we do technically that requires people to go in the office, which we have seen moving to working from home. So we have very quickly, although we've been assessing it and looking at this over the last few years, COVID has really allowed us to fast track a lot of initiatives. So, for example, editing content, which typically has been in edit suites in our facilities, doing, it could be editing the next Doctor Who promo, for example. That has always traditionally been bums on seats in the office, using a lot of our infrastructure. Our offices are co-located with the BBC, comes at a high cost. We're now starting to see a lot of that happen at home. So people can access the content from home. We use their laptops. We have glass cockpits. And that has multiple benefits. It means greater flexibility for those staff. It means we can have greater flexibility in our workforce. We can get people in our offices in Romania to do editing. And of course, it provides the ability for those staff members who are isolating to continue to work. And we can protect the safety and interests of our customers and of our staff as well. So that's one. And Simon, I can go on for quite a few others. So if that's okay with you, I'll continue.
Yeah, that's fine.
So the other big aspect of broadcast in general is traditionally we have, and people will have seen this if you attended a big football match, you'll see fleets of large articulated trucks which contain a lot of production equipment. That has been the way of doing production for very tens of years now, pretty much since the evolution of live production, and that has many restrictions. You're restricted to, you ship all of that technology in a vehicle. It's gone for long periods of time. So if your warehouse is based in London, for example, and you're going to Old Trafford, that's a day out of the office traveling there. Then the team are rigging all of that equipment. Then they do the event. Then they have to de-rig it and bring it back. That is extremely time consuming. So that equipment is out of service for probably 5 days. It has huge environmental impact because you're driving those vehicles up and down the motorway. The staff are out of the office, are staying in hotels. So this is something, again, that we have been monitoring and looking at and testing prior to COVID. And it's a functionality called remote production or centralized production. But now with the onset of very highly connected countries like the UK, lots of fibre optic connectivity, and really with the onset of 5G technology coming in, we're now centralizing a lot of that technology and offering to do production in one location. So we can do multiple football matches, or we can do multiple cricket matches, or whatever live event it really is, all from one location. We have cameras out in the field, bringing all the content into our core facilities. We're processing all of that. We're using IP technology to also allow us to evolve how we set up and use and architect the facilities and the topology. And that means that we now have all of our people in one location. They're not traveling. We're not polluting the environment. And then with COVID layered on top, we're now getting people to come in and access that equipment centrally, remotely from their home. And you may have seen recently things like a lot of the television productions that, live news, people are self-operating that from cameras in their homes, and they're doing things over Zoom and etc. So there's been a massive evolution in terms of the way we work and operate. And not only has it been beneficial, it's been beneficial to the safety of our staff, but equally it's been beneficial to the environment. So it's and it equally has a lot of efficiencies in terms of the way we work and the way we use technology. It's more now shared, and we're not losing equipment for multiple days. The equipment we use for one match, as soon as it finishes, we can now use that for another match. So it's been really beneficial.
Do you think those are here to stay, or will it revert if things ease off? Will it revert back? Is this the new way of working now in your environment?
100%. It's certainly, we won't be looking back. From a investment perspective, to kit out a large articulated lorry that does ultra HD, you're talking 16 million pounds maybe. We can now have those trucks consolidated in our facilities. We're now looking at using that all as software. So the efficiencies from a purchasing perspective are astronomical, and the benefits on the staffing, and you just would never go back to answer that question. And that has been what we've seen internally. The major shift externally has been obviously streaming, as you've seen. Consumption of Netflix, Prime, Sky Now, it's gone through the roof. I'm sure lots of people have been scratching their head to what to do. I know I'm consuming more content. So we've seen a massive increase in all parties using streaming. And that actually is people creating their own. So if you think about religious organizations and how people do churches or mosques or whatever, they now doing streaming directly to their audiences at home. There are smaller live events that aren't broadcast. Leyton Orient, for example, we were one of the pioneers of doing streaming in the National League when we were there, unfortunately. And we're now seeing that those type of organizations are using streaming to reach their fan base. So that's been a massive step change, and the competency in all organizations, I think, is increasing. So, in Red Bee, we've created a self-service platform. People can go in there and actually purchase a monthly license to do streaming. It comes with all of the capabilities, all the front-end development. You can have apps out of the box. So there's been a massive increase in that, and I think people are now seeing the benefits of going what we call direct to consumer. So previously they may have sold their content to large broadcasters. That's not really a requirement anymore. Fan base is openly available, as people have seen with YouTube and Facebook. We can just go direct to consumer, and I think that landscape's going to massively change over the coming months, years. But it's here to stay, and that won't change forever now.
So you touched there on Orient and the streaming that's been going on there, and I've been really impressed with the content this season, the look and feel of the studio, the content of the stream and the quality of all the comms that go with it and the whole thing. And I know you've been heavily involved in that. At what point did you kind of make the decision, or were decisions made, and what choices did you have in terms of you guys got involved and built that and put the content together and streamed it, or were there other options with the EFL? What were the primary decisions? And then I suppose from a risk and reward point of view, why did the club go in the direction it did?
Yes. So you have to remember, streaming has been an interesting journey for us. When we took over the club, our 3-year plan was to introduce technology innovation throughout the organisation. We have to remember that a lot of our board are traditional businessmen, and we try and bring a fairly rigid business mentality to the club to try and make it more sustainable. And you see that with introducing of EPOS systems. We now, hopefully can have digital season ticket passes. All of these things are being introduced, and streaming was one of the big aspects. But the negative side of being promoted or being relegated to the National League was we all of a sudden had no streaming platform. Streaming actually comes part and parcel of the EFL package. So we had to start from nothing and actually build our own streaming platform. And with that, we learned lots of lessons. I think we were fortunate that we had some experience in the club through myself and others. So we went through that journey, and it was challenging because every club in the National League, some of them didn't even have internet. And then if you ask for some power to drive a camera, they'd look at you with a bit of a funny look. And quite often back then, we had clubs who said, we don't want you filming the match. So there was a lot of negotiation and headache in the background. We had to use 4G technology to get the live content that we filmed ourselves back to into the cloud so we can do streaming. Thankfully, that's now behind us, but it was a very good lesson for the staff that worked at the club to how do we increase our professionalism in doing that type of technology. Last year, we were very fortunate that now, thankfully, the EFL take care of doing the production. So they now film the matches, and that was a great stepping stone. We took the option to opt out of the EFL iFollow platform. So everything that we do from a streaming perspective on the front end is ourselves and controlled by us. We had some teething issues, but we got through that. And that gives us, numerous. We get a larger share of the revenues from the streaming platform itself. So that has a big benefit to the club. We have greater flexibility of using the data that comes with it, and sponsorship, which is another revenue opportunity that we've been exploiting. So that was last year's strategy, which was really bed in, having our own streaming platform. We introduced the app later in the year. But we've always had our vision has been to increase the production and the editorial quality of what we've been producing. And that's what we introduced this year. We've now introduced a studio where we have a pre-match and a halftime and post-match show. It is to paying fans, but really the thing is we want to make that as editorially high quality as possible, because we appreciate that paying the £10 fee to watch a match is not insignificant. It's a fairly high price per game. And it's important to say that price is not set by us. That's set by EFL regulations, and we lobby for our opinion, and that's considered. But then ultimately, the EFL take the considerations of all clubs, and that's all EFL clubs, including Championship clubs, to come to an outcome. So the £10 fee is set. So we thought it was important to not only provide as much value to the club, but it's also a good communication tool, a good outlet for us to convey what's going on at the club and messaging. And my father's obviously a big advocate for being completely transparent to our fans, and I think that's been important during COVID and during these crises. But so it allows us to bring messaging from the club. It allows us to, and then we can then introduce the sponsorship, which we've seen, and that's an extra revenue we now have coming in. And all I could say to our fans is that I encourage everybody to help us during these dark times where we have no fans in the ground. And also the other reason for really having a high editorial quality is for our season. Those people who have thankfully decided and took the risk to go with season passes and buy season tickets, although there was a little bit of an unknown of where we would get to with that. So that's the other real major justification for having a studio and going on that new journey for this year.
No, I've watched them today and think the content's been good. It's been good to see, Peter Kitchen, John Mackey, some of the others come on and have a chat full time and half time. So yeah, it's as close as you can get, isn't it, without being able to replicate physically being in a football ground. So no, from my point of view as a fan through and through, great job, and I think much better than other clubs and other people. I know are fans of other clubs, and it gives us a really great platform to build on moving forward. So yeah, hats off to you. I know you and the team worked really hard at it in a short space of time for the bit that COVID brought around, but it's been part of the longer term strategy and plan. So yeah, hats off to you and the board. Great job.
Well, thank you. And we've got more to come. We've got a little bit of a roadmap of things we want to add. So we're going to introduce, hopefully, social media. We're also going to introduce live interviews with the playing staff and Ross and etc. post-match. And we're also, hopefully, in the longer run, going to actually offer fans dial-in opportunities. So they can ask questions to the team on board. We're going through some testing with that type of activities in the background, but there's definitely more to come on the fan engagement side to even drive more interactivity and hope make the quality even better.
Amazing. No, it's good to hear. It's good to hear. So, yeah, no, thanks again. It's good job. Good job
Thank
today.
you.
So in terms of, we touched on it prior in terms of how the industry's changed in these times, and you talked about people working from home. And again, in our business, we've seen the rise of Teams, Hangouts, Zoom, Blue Jeans. I lose track of all the video conferencing stuff. How have you seen that evolve, and have you seen any kind of particular risks in those areas or things for people to watch out for?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big advocate of since joining Red Bee, which is actually owned by Ericsson. They've used conference call systems, and they're a large global company of 110,000 people. We tried to restrict travel by using conference call systems. We use Teams. Previously, we used Skype. And the ability to share content has been fantastic. The fact that you can share your screen. I actually dragged our board kicking and screaming to using Teams, and we now use Teams, Leyton Orient. And it's really good from that perspective. I think the biggest risk I see with that is keeping people's attention. I don't know about most people, but a lot of people I know seem to have two screens. They've got the Skype or the Teams or Chime or any one of those conference collaboration tools running on one, and they're probably doing activities on the other. So ensuring that you get full attention when you're on these calls is difficult. Obviously, video helps a lot with that. But yeah, I think the multitasking bit is just obviously the bit that you'd be concerned about when on these calls and getting the full attention. But I mean, the other big major benefit is the collaboration tools. I mean, Teams and the way you can set up groups, you can share content. The way we work generally has changed for the better, I believe. And they're all on the evolutions of SharePoint and these other OneDrive and etc. But I like Teams. It's brought. I'm not trying to promote it at all, and I think they're fairly similar between the ones offered by different companies. But the collaboration piece is so much easier in terms of the ways of working now. I think the other big risk, though, is knowing when to stop. I think people are working longer hours, ironically, although the trip to the office is not there anymore for most people. It's you can be on there at 8 o'clock and you might still be on there at 9 o'clock, and that's a risk. People's health and well-being and taking breaks is hard to monitor. and not having the conversation around the kettle in the kitchen. I think that interaction is missed, and picking up on, depending on where you are in the organisation, picking up on those tidbits of, oh, I'm unhappy with this, is probably harder to recognise when you're so distant from your organisation.
Yeah, we've talked about it on a couple of podcasts. I think there's hopefully not too big, but I think there is this wave of 6-12 months time when people have been out of office for a long time, or as you've seen with the likes of Twitter saying that in effect the office is closed forever, that there'll be a wave of trying to bring people physically back together because everything's planned, everything's in your diary and regimented, and you go from Zoom to Google Meets to Teams, wherever it might be. But like you say, one in a lot of organisations, my time in retail, a lot of the magic's done at the coffee machine. That's where I didn't expect to see you today. Can we just sort out X, Y, and Z happens? And those tend to be the best conversations, the unplanned, the unscripted stuff.
Completely.
So, like you say, from a colleague well-being point of view, physically seeing people is a lot different than seeing them on a screen. Because, like you say, you're not sure what's happening behind them. You're not sure what's happening to the side of them if the phone's pinging or the kids are dancing behind the laptop they're on. It's a watch out for me. It's great we've gone digital and virtual, but I think at some point there will be a drive to physically get people back together again, however long away that will be. And it might not be every day, but I think it'll be a big benefit for as humans. We just thrive off other people, don't we?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I'm actually reading a book on Netflix, ways of working and how they have no rules in their organisation. And one part of that book talks about holidays, and Netflix have a zero vacation policy, so they don't track, and you can take as much vacation as you like, which is an interesting. And the reason why they do it is they advocate breaks, create creative ideas. So they generate creative ideas because people have time to sort of sit back, consider what they're doing, positives, negatives, and then they suddenly have a spark of inspiration. And it's the same around being around the coffee machine. Or it's equally the same as going out in an evening and meeting up with colleagues and just talking about what you like and dislike about the organisation and what you could do better. That doesn't happen. And as human beings, we all want to be together. And I remember after the last lockdown, seeing people for the first time, as human beings, you instinctively move closer to them, and that's missed, and that is a risk. And hopefully, we won't have to put up with this for that much longer. But it's very uncertain times, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. It is. And the Netflix thing's interesting. I was reading something the other day, and Google have something similar about kind of employee stuff in terms of they let their peers decide pay rate and people are paid well above average, but then you're held accountable to your peers as well. So they can almost hire and fire you if they don't think you're doing a good job. So all that stuff will come as the world changes and becomes more, I suppose, people-led and tech-led. Interesting times, like I say. So we'll finish on football then. So going to be a strange season, I think. Maybe a bit stop and start. Hopes for Ross and the boys this season.
Yeah, I mean they've done a fantastic job so far. I think it's been a good start. Been super impressive how we've come out always in the second half. We seem to be the comeback kings at the moment. So hopefully starting a bit stronger will really help us. I'm just concerned about where we'll be with this stop-start season. I think the disruption we had with the Tottenham game, the disruption now this weekend. We're probably the first club, but we're not going to be the only club that go through this, and maybe our fixtures are going to be affected by that as well, because other clubs may have to be socially distanced. So it's going to be a very peculiar, uncertain season. I was very confident about our season. I thought people talk about what's changed. Have we made any changes? So I think the one benefit we've got is we've got a really solid group of people. We have a great atmosphere around the club. The team now have bedded in. We know each other very well, and I think one thing is that people talk about is, have we strengthened? Well, maybe we haven't brought in we haven't strengthened in massive amounts, but equally other teams haven't. They've actually maybe lost players. So I think we need to focus more about what is what's the, sorry, what's the situation of the competition, and I think we're in a good place. But as long as we can keep that continuity and keep training, and we don't get the disruption of season, which I think unfortunately is reasonably likely, and that's going to be the risk to our season. That it's a big unknown.
Yeah, they remind me a bit of the Russell Slade season we got to the playoff final in terms of no. There were some big spenders in that league, Wolves at the time. We've got Bolton, Mansfield, Salford to a degree. They've gone through lots of transitions, at least two of those teams, so we've got the stability on our side. But also the fact I don't think if you look at all the predictions from all the pundits, we're mid-table-ish. I think we're team spirit, dark horses, not conceding many goals, Danny Johnson scoring every game, good support from the others. So I always like it when we're dark horses and we come through and there's no real expectation. I think those are the great seasons. Pressure's off to a degree. So no, like you, I think we'll get some disruption, unfortunately, just because of life as it is. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're up there at least in the playoffs with what we've got currently.
I would agree with that. Hopefully, it won't come back to haunt me. But yeah, no, I certainly agree. I mean, it's good to see the goals coming from all over the pitch. And Danny's instinctive, being that fox in the box, real out and out striker. I mean, it's interesting. Some people say, "Oh, Danny Johnson wasn't in the game for certain periods." You see it on Twitter, but it doesn't necessarily have to be, because it's the one bit of inspiration for 15 seconds that can get the goal, and he has that ability. So I'm really excited. If we can stay fit, keep going the way we're going, it's going to be exciting. But as we just said, it's the unknown of COVID-19 and what that presents for the season. And hopefully the season will stay alive and football won't be stopped. And we will get to the end of the season, and hopefully without much disruption, I'm confident with you that we could be up there. And let's hopefully, fingers crossed.
And I think Danny Johnson's the first, for me personally, and people disagree, the first, like you say, fox in the box we've had since probably Lee Steele, which is a bit of a throwback. But we've had some great strikers, Macaulay Bonner and all the others since, but they've not been that get the goals, tapping it in just over the line, always in the right place. They've been more outside the box headers, more beautiful goals, let's say. Where Lee Steele and Danny Johnson for me are that, they're always there just to poke it over the line from a yard out, which makes a massive difference.
Yeah, and we've got goals, Leanne goal, Connor Wilkinson, Rule, that they're all exciting, and I feel like we've got a bit of depth there. I know Ross has some selection headaches, and while that may be challenging for him, it's a good thing to have. And while all those players are fit, I mean, some of the ball control by Connor, all of these things, it's great to see. So going forward, we're looking strong. So long may it continue, and let's see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you coming on, David. And if people want to connect with you, you're on LinkedIn. They can Google you and find you. Final question from me then is, what's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Challenging one. I think I would always say openness and transparency. I think too much organisations, people and staff try and do what's right for their boss rather than what's right for the organisation. And I'm certainly a big believer in that sort of open culture. So openness, I think, is probably the answer to that. Never being afraid to speak up. No idea is a bad idea. I think is, and certainly in a technology organisation, that is really important.
Yeah, and you can see some of that comes through from the way your dad interacts with the fans in the club as well. So clearly a family belief as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. I really appreciate your time, and thanks for coming on. We'll catch up soon.
No, thank you very much, Simon. It's been really good talking to you. Take care.